To put Brahms and Mahler together in consecutive weeks is a very interesting link. They don't belong together, but in a way they were both exploding the idea of a symphony. Brahms was very concerned about the tradition that he was continuing. He spent many years before he could come to write this first symphony. But when he did write it, it of course has many, many connections with his tradition, with the music that he'd been brought up with Beethoven, and particularly with Beethoven. But his thinking is always to move very carefully, but very boldly away from the tradition. And of course, between Brahms and Mahler, there are very few years. The changes in society, the changes in culture, the changes in the way that people thought about music were dramatic in the space of 20, 30 years. And so we come with Mahler, and especially with the Sixth Symphony, to something that is a completely different way of approaching the idea of symphony. Mahler, to begin with, used the idea of song and the idea of words and the inspiration of texts for his symphonies, but in the Sixth Symphony he completely abandons this idea. There are very few connections with song, with words. He avoided the idea of a program, of a dramatic idea behind the symphony. He wanted an abstract symphony, and because it's an abstract symphony, he wrote a piece that is actually even more personally dramatic for him than his previous symphonies, I think. It expresses more of his own anxieties, his own struggles with the world than any of the first five symphonies. I think it's a really extraordinarily personal statement. This orchestra has developed enormously over its 20 years, and the repertoire has changed, the repertorio has changed quite a lot. Its tradition is built upon very firm foundations, particularly with classical repertoire, with Mozart and Haydn, Beethoven, Schubert. And in the last years, we have expanded the repertoire a little bit. And to play Mahler is quite a new departure for this orchestra, which has been set up more as a classical orchestra. So contemporary music and the music of expressionist music that comes from the 20th century, I think really feeds the tradition of playing Beethoven, and the great tradition for this orchestra of playing classical music also, if you like, informs the way it plays the more contemporary music that we play now. Actually, of course, it's a very big milestone, we say in English, to reach 20 years. It doesn't mean that it's a chance to feel old or experienced. It's still a very, very young orchestra, and the approach of the orchestra, I think, is very young, if you like. I think the orchestra feels like pioneers. They are 20 years young, not 20 years old. And I think that spirit, that character, is always to push the boundaries, to discover new landscape, to discover new parts of the repertoire, to discover new public every time we do a concert, to discover new ways of entertaining or playing this wonderful music for different publics, for families, for children, for in different places in Galicia. It's a very, very important, if you like, milestone to reach, a moment to reach in the history of the orchestra, but it only means it's the first 20 years. It goes very quickly on to the next 20, and the next 20, and the next 20.
Thank you very much, Paul Daniel.
Thank you very much.